Hello and welcome to the Discriminating Gamer, the Kaiser Soze of board game review shows. I just read that on the wall behind you. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to go ahead and take a look at Combat Infantry from Columbia Games. In Combat Infantry from Columbia Games, two players are going to take over the roles of the American and German armies in 1944 to 1945 during the fighting on the Western Front. This is a block war game, something that Columbia Games is well known for. The game comes with two paper maps that represent, of course, the various places over which these armies fought during the period. And, of course, you get a number of gray blocks for the Germans, green blocks for the Americans, and yellow blocks that represent, of course, various features and items that can appear during the game. This is a typical block war game. Of course, you've got the different blocks that face you. So there's a fog of war. The other side cannot see what your guys are most of the time. You rotate the steps. You've got up to 4 steps on the tops of the different sides of these blocks. So you rotate them to determine their strength and how many die they're going to roll. If you take a hit, you would rotate from 4 to 3, etc., etc. Now, the game comes with 6 scenarios. You have different scenarios that are going to tell you setup. It's going to tell you what units you have. You're going to get a company HQ. You're going to get some platoon HQs. And then, of course, you're going to get numbers of blocks that are associated with those platoons. You're also going to get, in a lot of the scenarios, a draw of various battalion items. These are different weapons that, like tanks and flamethrowers and engineers, pioneers, these sorts of things that, of course, are going to come into play that are not necessarily directly attached to the platoons. You may also get, with a scenario, an artillery or an aircraft piece, and these, of course, are kind of off to the side of the board, and you kind of use them a little bit differently during the course of the game. Now, of course, the goal of the game is to capture geographical areas and critically to kill your opponent's units. That's, of course, how you gain your victory points. The game is based on the idea of these HQs, which activate other units. The platoon HQs can activate the units in their platoon, and, of course, the command HQs, they can activate up to 3 units anywhere, and then, of course, they can also activate some of the battalion units as well, or as the offboard artillery or aircraft. And when you activate a unit, it can do several different things. You can go ahead and rally, meaning you can try to roll a dice, a 10-sided die, against your morale number. If you get the roll right, you can go ahead and recover a step, so you can recover strength that way. You can move units, of course, from one hex to another. You've got a movement point allowance, and then, of course, every movement you do costs so many of those points. And then, of course, there's terrain effects too. You've got roads, you've got forests, you've got slopes, you've got all different things that are going to affect, of course, how many points you spend during movement. You have fire. You can essentially fire from one hex to another. You check your kind of fire number. You're going to roll as many die as you've got on your step, and then you're going to see if you get the hits that are at or beneath that fire number to score hits on your opponents. You can also assault. That's actually part of a movement action. When you move into a hex that's where there's an enemy is already there, you can kind of contest that, in which case you're going to go ahead and roll to see who gets control of that hex. You can also do special actions. You can lay down smoke to obscure line of sight. You can blow up bridges. You can dig foxholes and entrenchments. So there's different things you can create on the board. These are where the yellow blocks come in. Now, of course, when you're fighting, you're assaulting, you're revealing your blocks, you're showing each other what the blocks are. So you kind of lose that fog of war. Whenever you move or fire with a tank, you have to reveal the tank because, of course, they're loud. People can hear them. They can identify what kind of tank it is. But generally, that fog of war holds throughout the game. You're not going to know what the enemy's got and what you've got. You're going to go back and forth like this, of course, moving, firing, assaulting, doing these other actions in an attempt to wear down your enemy, gain those victory hexes, and destroy your opponent's blocks. Whoever can, of course, gain the most victory points by doing those things by the end of the scenario wins Combat Infantry. So it's been a while since I played a block game like Combat Infantry. This one's a little more complicated than, say, a Julius Caesar or a Napoleon 4th edition, which are some of my favorite block games from Columbia. It's a little more complicated. Not a lot, but it is a little more complicated. This game, it doesn't have some things you've seen in other tactical war games, like ASL or Tide of Iron or something like that. It doesn't have, like, suppression fire or opportunity fire. Things like that. They're not found in this game. They're trying to kind of simplify simplify the rules of these kinds of games, and generally that succeeds. It's a pretty fun game. Of course, it's kind of a dice contest. You're rolling the dice to try to take out your enemy. It's a typical war game like that. It's pretty fun and interesting. What really is interesting about this game is the sheer number of units that you have, different kinds of units, and they all have their own stats. They have very busy blocks, a lot of numbers on the blocks. Don't let that intimidate you. But you've got everything, like I say, got engineers and pioneers, you got mortars, you got snipers, you've got all sorts of different tanks and vehicles. The tanks have like their own armor ratings and stuff like that, so you've got to be able to score a hit rolling a die within a window, because you minus their armor rating from your score. So it's a very interesting system that they've created here. Now, having said this, one of my big complaints, and I've seen this in some other Columbia games, and that is the rulebook's not as clear as I'd like it to be. There were still some things where I was playing this game, and still some concepts were just a little difficult to get our head around. Initially, we figured most of it out, but even still, I got to say, I think maybe I was playing a few little things here and there wrong, which I wasn't wild about. I like to be able to play a game knowing I'm playing it right, and this one, like I say, I just had trouble finding what I was looking for in the rulebooks here and there. There are some good examples, some things were explained pretty well. Generally, though, there were a few little things that still were kind of dampened my appreciation for this game when I first played it. Having said that, it's a decent game. If you are familiar with these systems, familiar with block war games, and you like the variety of units, and you like a little complexity, not a lot, but a little complexity in the game, I think you're going to really enjoy this one, and I think you'll be fine with it. If you're kind of new to block wargaming, I'd probably recommend going with something like Julius Caesar or Napoleon 4th Edition, which is my favorite kind of block war game from Columbia Games. I think that's absolutely fantastic. I'd recommend those for maybe people who are just getting into it. Combat Infantry is a little bit more complicated, but still it's a lot of fun. The recommendation for the discriminating gamer for Combat Infantry, with that caveat, I'm going to say try it before you buy it, but it's a very positive try it before you buy it. Thank you once again for joining us today on The Discriminating Gamer. As always, we ask you to please leave a comment for us on YouTube, on BoardGameGeek, on our Facebook page, or on thediscriminatinggamer.com. We ask you to please like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter. We are The Discriminating Gamer, and ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot of strife, there's a lot of discord and disunity in our country today, and I just think at times like this, we really need to listen to the very important words of President Jimmy Carter, who said in 1979, "Everybody's got a special kind of story. Everybody finds a way to shine. It don't matter that you got not a lot. So what? They'll have theirs, you have yours, and I'll have mine. And together, we'll be fine." Good night, America.
Please somebody help me on my feet again. And I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know where I've been. Please somebody help me on the solid ground. It's a long time, and I'll be dying. Once a year I wind up in the band.
Hey, you guys need a teacher? You got a teacher. Well, I'm really familiar with this game. I played this game probably 24 times. This game's called Captain Sonar, right? It's one of the best games I've ever played. First off, have you ever played Battleship?
Yes. Yeah.
Identical to Battleship, all right? That's why you've got the border up the way that you set it up here, and you've got these different sectors, right? So what you're doing is you guys yell out numbers. You'll say like 5B, and if that's the number they were thinking of, then you get one of these foam pieces, right? You just get one, and whoever ends up with the most foam pieces at the end wins. Now, it's called Captain Sonar for a reason, because what you do is one of your team, you have to choose them, is the sonar, right? So you use kind of like clicks and pings to kind of determine when they're lying or being dishonest. You can be like, or ping, ping, and then if you feel like sense it, it takes practice. I'm just going to say it takes practice. It's really confusing. So you got these sonar cards, you use those, and then these are your different weapons, your different weaponry, right? So you can use either a submarine, or you can use a disc, like a frisbee, with explosives attached to it. And so you just throw those across. Those are the numbers that you use to determine whether you hit, and that's how you play the game. Super simple. All right, so you guys don't need this anymore. So, yeah, there you go.
Thank you. Thank you.